Hey everyone. Lots of you might think, wow, I have so many customers and you have like 20 or 40. Today, I have invited Samuel Bringas from the United States, who actually manages hundreds of customers in Latin America. First of all, Samuel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Stay tuned. We're going to peel the onion on how exactly is he able to successfully manage so many customers and give you a preview of what it might look like for you if you were to actually start taking care of the smaller customer base. Hi, Samuel. So before we begin to explore how you manage hundreds of customers, tell me a little bit, how did you even get into customer success?
Thank you for having me. I've been working for high-tech companies, technology companies for a long time, been dealing with customers all over the world. But as I moved to the United States, one of the niches that I found was that Latin America was kind of a place where not a lot of United States companies were dealing directly with. There has been a lot of interaction with Latin America, but there has not been dedicated resources for it. And when I joined the current company, I took upon myself to hear our Latin American customers. And so I became a sole customer success manager only for Latin America. Back then, that was about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, today, the team is much larger. I'm managing the team. Yeah, that's how I started.
And I want to emphasize, so before you became a customer success manager, by the way, you were working for a cyber company that's growing very fast. You were actually in account management, which is the cousin of customer success management, I would say. What do you see the big differences were once you switched roles? Were there any big differences?
Well, I was mostly on the telecommunication side. So my pool of customers are a lot smaller. You only have so many telecommunication companies in every country. So I can definitely tell you that my experience has been based on that. And because of that, I cannot express how different it is to work with enterprise customers or commercial customers. Again, when you're talking about telcos, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees and hundreds of thousands of customers. It's a very different experience going from telecommunication into the enterprise and the smaller customer sized companies.
Yeah, no, I understand. So not only you switched companies, it also sounds like you switched variably, like the customer base that you're dealing with today. So it's really hard to compare.
It was actually a very hard, difficult decision when I made it, because you're used to working with so very few customers and so very few people, but all of a sudden you get exposed not to tens, but hundreds or thousands of customers at one time. It's a little bit scary, but then you get the hang of it, and you know that it is impossible to be as involved in this type of role. And from account management, where you really deep inside one specific customer in the telecommunication to deep into hundreds across the board, it's very different.
Wow, it's extraordinary. First of all, why did they hire you? You don't even have the exact background. Sounds like completely different companies. What made them think, yeah, Samuel Bringas can do it?
Well, first of all, I do have a technical training background, which allowed me to be able to demonstrate how I can communicate really good with customers, how I can show them product and demos and talk to them about their issues and problems and be empathetic with our customers. So I think that was a key aspect of why they hired me. Obviously, trilingual, it helped a lot as well. And we did go through a very, very difficult technical challenge, and I was able to perform, I would say, better than average. So that also contributed for them to consider me as a new hire.
Okay, so you jump into the deep end. Congratulations for like 5 years ago making that leap of faith and believing in yourself that you could do something so different. It looks like you had training experience as a training instructor and a Spanish instructor back in your early days. So that background sounds like really helped you in delivering communications in maybe a one-to-many format. What are the first things that you've done as a customer success manager to help you succeed in your role? Did you lean heavily on your training skills and your account management skills?
I definitely leaned a lot into the training skills, because I had to have a lot of conversations with customers about their product and how they worked and situations that we're facing. So there was a lot of explaining to do. And when you explain, obviously, you need to know how to communicate. And the training part came in very, very handy. Now, on the back end of stuff, the project management or account management, obviously it helped a lot because to be a successful customer success manager, you have to be an organized person. You need to be able to follow up with customers to make sure that what you say, you follow through. And a lot of the management skills, the account management skills, they do shine in the customer success role. Because of that transition, I think it was a successful.
Yeah. So insofar you end up in this role, what happens the first few months? How many customers do you get? By the way, this was 5 years ago. So just like to tell the story, because I think it's really fascinating. You would move from handful of accounts to hundreds of accounts. So did you really receive hundreds of accounts in the first few months in your role?
So as a trainee, I received the pooled model, which means that I was dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of small requests coming in from customers while I was learning the trade and I was learning our product. So obviously that helped me a lot to learn about the product, learn about our customers, learn about the culture, learn about the methodologies. And a few months after, I was assigned to a region, more specifically the southeast of North America. And then I started dealing personally with a few hundred customers. From there onwards, it's been a ride because now I'm in charge of the whole region and also in charge of the partner side of customer success. So we're talking about, again, thousands. But Latin America, it's still hundreds.
Wow. So, okay. So first of all, I want to clarify, they wouldn't have promoted you unless this was a successful endeavor. So let's scale back and say, okay, you're a customer success manager and you say you were in a pooled model. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how long have you stayed in the role?
It was about 3 to 4 months that I stayed in this pooled model. Again, while I was getting trained, while I learned the trade. Right after that, I got assigned the region.
How many people or how many CSMs did they have in that pooled model constellation at that time?
It was dynamic. Every time we used to get a new CSM or a very expert CSM, by the way, because also they would pull some expert CSMs to help with very specific problems within a product. So it was a combination between very new and very pros. It could be anywhere between 3 and 10 CSM at any given time.
Got it. And some of them stayed in that pooled model because they were what we call SMEs.
Oh, right.
Subject matter experts. And some just graduated fairly quickly once they got comfortable with product, the type of questions they might be asked, and they felt like they're ready to own their own book of business, then they would be assigned. All right. So it didn't really feel, one of the questions I had about that pooled model experience, did it feel like a support role, a technical support manager role, because you were in a pooled model, or was it really like a customer success manager?
It was more like a support role. Yeah, it was putting out fires. You would be brought in only when there are issues, and it definitely felt more like technical support. But it had some CSM aspects to it, so that's where you actually learn the trade. But yeah, it was putting out a lot of fires.
What kind of things have you done that felt more like a CSM in that pooled model, if you don't mind my asking?
I would say in the relationship side, having the conversation about product and not problems, having conversations about roadmap and not issues. So I think that was a more CSM-like conversations I had back then, which carried on into what we do today, right? It's more about the strategy and not about the issues.
Were you allowed to be proactive during your time in that pooled model?
I would say yes, but being proactive to shift the conversation towards a different department, if it was sales engineering, if it was account executives. So yeah, I would open up the possibility of a next conversation in order to stabilize otherwise problematic relationship.
Versus a support ticket that you would be expected to close and then move on to the next.
Well, yeah, of course, there were no support tickets because this is something done, in the shadows, right, behind the scenes.
Okay, great. So 4 or 5 months later, you are assigned to your own region. And this is where you actually own a book of business of hundreds of customers in Latin America. For those of you who didn't get it yet, Samuel Bringas was born and raised in Latin America, fluent in Spanish. So it was a no-brainer.
That is right. While I was dealing with the southeast of the United States, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, and so on, I turned my head south and I started looking at customers down there. And I started helping out. I don't want to call it a hobby because obviously I'm getting paid for this, right? But it was very enjoyable because this was my language, this was my culture. So I started helping them out. And then before I realized, I saw myself emerge into Latin American customers only. And that's where I kind of let go of the US aspect of my responsibilities and started dealing solely with Latin America. So I started a team of one person in Latin America, and today we're a team of about 4 or 5 people for customer success only for Latin America.
Wow, that's fairly impressive, I would say. So the company sounds like when you joined, didn't really have a spotlight on that region, but you, out of your own initiatives, started to cater to that region from passion, from connectivity, from your background. But I think that something happened. They were starting to seeing results that they haven't seen before. What happened? What did you do?
Well, I mean, the company is a great company with a great product, and the product was selling really well. I mean, it is still obviously selling really well in Latin America. They saw the need of a CSM, and then once they had one, they saw that there was an uptick on renewals, they saw there was an uptick on expansion, and it was a no-brainer. Let's hire the second one. And then that was my first team. Like I had my first report. And they saw again that it was picking up, and let's try it again. We hired in a second region, which was Mexico. This has been proving itself again and again. And now, after 4 years, we're hiring the fifth person for Latin America. So it's a proven model in Latin America. Customer success management works in Latin America.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know they're very friendly and people oriented. So having a person dedicated to your account can't really be a bad thing, but you do have hundreds of them per CSM. So what is the exact ratio? 1 to 300, 1 to how many?
So the way that we do customer success management is we're not proactively covering all customers. We're covering a very specific segment. So our ratios are anywhere between 1 to 10 to 1 to 40.
Okay.
Depending on the country, depending on the skill levels.
So when you first were assigned to the region, you said I actually owned hundreds of accounts. As a CSM, that could be fairly overwhelming. How did you handle that? What were the first things that you've done in the first few months to kind of create enough success in the region to get to the results that you have today, where you have an actual team?
As a sole contributor back then, I was tasked with a very difficult challenge, which was how do I deal with all these customers, right? We're talking about hundreds. The first thing I had to do was make a list of priorities. Who should I care for first? Now, every customer is important, but there are some customers that they need more attention, or that they bring higher returns, right? A higher ARR. So it's very important also to cater to them especially. It had to be a decision where some got little left behind and some of them were heavily pushed from the beginning.
Okay, so you looked at your entire customer base and you started prioritizing. How did you know if somebody needed more attention than another account?
Well, it came down to either the interest of the company for that ARR, end of the spectrum. If the customer had a lot of issues because of them or because of us, then we had to pamper the customer in one way or another. So I was there to do that as well. It was either strategic in the money sense or relationship sense.
So how did you communicate with them? Was there anything that you've done to allow some sort of communications to those who were not a high priority? Because it sounds like, and so correct me if I'm wrong, when you first got your book of business, you were actually giving a higher touch model to those who you needed to prioritize. But then what did you do with the other accounts?
Well, I was the red button. If they have an issue, they can come to me. But those customers, I would not have looked for them proactively. I was there for them, the red phone, the red button, but I wasn't proactively looking for them.
So did you email all of them and said, hey, I'm your new CSM. If there's any issues, feel free to reach out to me. And if they did, great, you would handle it. But if not, so it was kind of like a just-in-time type of enablement model. But then the ones that you have highlighted as needing more attention, you would actually provide them with a monthly touch point or a quarterly touch point or even a weekly, I guess, in some.
Yeah, correct. In the beginning stages, I blasted all my customers with emails saying, hey, I'm here for you. You new assigned the CSM, whatever you need, I'm here for you. But then again, those that we wanted to keep a high touch or low touch, consistent touch with that customer, then I would make other ways of coming to them on site, having phone calls with them bi-weekly or monthly basis, And that's how I actually finished the passport pages really quickly. Before the
Yeah.
pandemic, I was traveling about 70% of the time.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, all that I bet ended during the pandemic. What do you do then? How do you keep in
Well,
touch? Do you still have to date just a higher touch with a significant account and a very active, just in time type of enablement model for the smaller accounts? Or did you develop something else to manage hundreds of accounts?
so in the
Best
beginning
way
of the pandemic, what we started doing was a lot of webinars. So invite all our customers to come into our webinars, and it was a way to try to keep engaged, right? And it actually worked. We had hundreds of participants every single time, and we had like a weekly webinar about different subjects. If it was product related, methodology related, open question webinars, right?
for these webinars, did you offer them specifically to the Latin American region? And if so, did you do it in their local language? Because even in Latin America, there's multiple languages.
In the beginning, it was obviously Spanish, but because we do have a Brazilian customer
Right.
success manager, we were able to quickly replicate to Portuguese as well. Now, for other languages, like French, it's a very small countries and they don't really require a lot of our help. And the only one country that speaks English in Latin America, excluding the Caribbean islands, they get a lot of help and information from the US side, where everything is in English, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just send them existing links and invited them to existing events.
So you did offer it in their local language, essentially
Yeah,
Portuguese and Spanish.
correct.
Do you feel like some of the topics that you chose were more popular or more in demand than others? It was like a
Yeah,
hit and miss.
yeah, of course. I mean, when we talk about strategy, it was packed full because you would bring not only the technical people, you would bring in the CISOs and the CIOs and the managing directors for different departments. And when you had webinars which were technical oriented, well, only the technical people will join, right? So that was a huge difference.
Okay, so it sounds like your strategy was to deliver content to each persona. And I think that's really smart. I don't know how many companies are actually coming up and say, all right, it's the pandemic, or we're not going to travel as much. And we want to cater to hundreds of customers versus just the 10, 20% that are most significant to us. Let's do webinars. And then let's make sure that the webinars are actually catering to all the different key personas within that account. I think that was very smart. Did you offer anything else besides webinars now that you couldn't travel and do high touch anymore?
Well, we continue doing those one-on-ones. We continue doing those meetings. We continue being the red button for all those CISOs and technical people whenever they had any issues. It was the same work that we did before, just a little less personal because we were not traveling there anymore. But eventually I did see an uptick of improvement of relationships because now you don't have to plan your travel. You can just date in the calendar and that's it. You're virtually there, right? I did see an uptick on that closeness between customers and CSMs. I think it made it a lot better. And now maybe to the point where it's expected more than before. We're expected to be there more for our customers because we've been there with them for the past 2 years nonstop.
Absolutely. So, Samuel, somebody's going to inherit a book of business of hundreds of accounts. What would you recommend them to do besides webinars and prioritization and maybe segmentation of their book of business?
Well, as a manager, I would say you have to be organized and make sure that you're looking at the KPIs from your CSMs that are coming from the customers. That's key. As an individual contributor, as a CSM, I would say again, be extremely organized. Make sure that you're keeping up with the trends of their industries and see where they're going. Because we're not just talking about cybersecurity here, right? We're talking about anything SaaS, anything customer success. So you have to keep up with the trends of your customers and know also who your contacts are. Make sure that you're keeping an open line of communication with your customers.
But you have 600 customers as a CSM. How would you know all your contacts and how would you keep up with their different industries? That's like, I mean, I appreciate the advice, but if I had 20 accounts, totally. 600, that's a bit much.
Well, I mean, I don't wish anybody to inherit 600 customers at once.
I know some that do, or 300, even 75.
Right. I mean, I don't deal personally with 600 accounts. I deal with a lot more than that. But again, as a manager, I do have a team of extraordinary CSMs that they have their smaller book of business, and they are very proactive with them. The rest of the customers, the only way we can approach them is either like the one-to-many approach with webinars, making sure that they know that there is somebody, there is a group out there that's willing to listen to them, it's willing to help them out when they have an issue or if they have any questions or concerns with the product, with the roadmap where they're heading. That would be my best recommendation.
So when you hire a customer success manager to manage that region, you're looking for folks that are highly organized, proactive, that know the language and the culture, I assume. That's all sounds like something that's very important.
Correct. And if they are technical savvy, that's a huge plus.
Especially for cyber, I think that you got to speak the CISO's language, obviously.
Correct.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I think from your standpoint, you can kind of share what helped you as a manager of a region too, to kind of hire the right team and manage 2 KPIs and offer someone to many. But I think the key is really to have your CSMs prioritize their book of business, reach out to all of the accounts, but then cater at a higher touch to those significant accounts.
That is correct. Just make sure that everybody knows you exist.
Yeah.
And if they need you, they know where to find you.
When you look at when you started working with the Latin American region to now 5 years later, when you manage a team that oversees that region, have you seen any improvement since you started managing the region in customer satisfaction? And what would you contribute as a success since you started managing the region? What kind of impact did you have on the region?
Well, yeah, there has been a huge uptick in what we would call success, and it's mostly I would attribute it mostly to an amazing team, first of all, but it has to do with expectation setting, making sure that the customers know exactly what to expect and that we know exactly what they're expecting from our product. Once we can match those 2 things together, there is no way for anything to go wrong. How many times have we heard about the story of a customer that 5 years after they purchase a product, they still believe that the product they purchased did not solve their problems. In reality, maybe we have. The problem is who's been keeping track of that advancement, of that coverage, of the gap between the problem and the solution. And I think that has been a key aspect of improvement.
Yeah, I think that's really, really an important point. So if anybody is listening to this video and inherits a new region, these are the kind of things you want to focus on. You want to focus on, are you giving your customers the right message? Are you talking about your product correctly? Are you setting expectations correctly? Do you have the right amount of people assigned to those accounts? Do they know how to prioritize them? How do you add value to the hundreds of accounts that can't afford a frequent touch point? Do you have your customer success managers reach out to them and remind them that they are there for a just-in-time engagement model? So I think all of these points are really valid.
Yes. And having a digital team, that can have outbound communication with all the customers in a digital manner, obviously tracking advancements of the usage of the product automatically, right? So we can trigger different kind of events for different kind of playbooks. Again, making sure that not only the account, but the account team, it's very important that they also know that you're there. If you're looking inwards into your own company, you have to make sure that your own internal regional team, they know of you, they know how you can help. Because in many cases where we are not the person in front of the customer, somebody else will be. If it's an account executive, it's a sales engineer. So it's important for them to know that, hey, there is somebody within my own company that can help me improve my relationship with my customer.
So you have a tool to track usage data. And do you also have a customer success solution that you're using to feed that usage data so that your team is aware when usage data drops or there's any issues?
We do.
That's excellent. And then you also mentioned KPIs and making sure that the other teams understood what your job was. Does your team own upsell and cross-sell, or do they have to actually leverage a sales team for the financial transactions?
So we mostly own renewals and expansion. So and obviously making sure that the product is adopted.
Yeah.
So adoption, renewal, and expansion.
This was really fascinating to hear all the different things. I was going to ask you what kind of campaigns you send those customers to make sure that it hits the spot, because sometimes I'm a member of a bank, right? I have a bank account, and sometimes they send me emails about like, oh, here's a checking account for little kids. I'm like, my kids are in college. Like, why are you even sending me this? And so sometimes I think there should be a lot of cautiousness around, what emails you're actually sending each account. And so I wonder if you feel like sometimes those emails are a complete miss, or you have like a secret sauce on how to make sure you send them the
So
right
we have a whole department that deals with that specific part of the business, right? Those digital campaigns.
Yeah.
And I think they're all very spot on, right? With invitations for different events or FYIs on product utilization or new versionings. And I think they all help in their own different way. I
Got it.
don't think there's any misses there.
Yeah, so you actually have a separate account for that. I think that's smart. Sometimes companies assign that to the customer success team, and I think that's such a big miss.
It's
Some
still within the customer success department, but it is their own side of the business.
Yeah, well, I actually could see it how marketing might own it as part of customer marketing team versus a lead generating team, because you actually absolutely need to have some marketing skills. I had one client that actually brought someone from marketing to be under their team, and then they've done a lot of campaigns and they've done a lot of like blitz campaigns, like call campaigns on different things, and they really help the team out in having the right collateral and enablement. I think it's really valued to have somebody like that in the CS ops team for a customer success team in general.
Agree.
Samuel, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you in this conversation. It's really fascinating when you hear people manage hundreds of accounts. I want to thank you for sharing the reality. This is how it works. This is how you can actually do this.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure sharing my experience with you and with all your audience. Hope this helps them.
Guys, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel because it always helps out. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I will see you at the next video.